The end of the year is rapidly approaching, and during this time, I like to reflect on the past year and kind of have a reset before going into the new year. I love to start with kind of a fresh slate, and having a refreshed state of mind, I feel is really important into having the most creative year that you can. So today I have some tips and tricks into making the most of your new year, having a creative restart, if you will. My first step is to prioritize consuming. I don't really like to use that word. Prioritize art over content. I have found times where I am so sucked into my phone that I lose track of time, and it's a very mind-numbing experience, and I have found that it's actually damaged my creativity. Whenever you sit and scroll on TikTok or Reels, your brain isn't properly processing what it is that you saw. You may be seeing super creative people doing amazing things. You're not digesting it the way that you would digest a film. You may be scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and if I asked you what you saw 3 short videos ago, you wouldn't be able to tell me because your brain hasn't had the time to process it. It's great for getting that dopamine hit, but not so great for actually learning techniques and being inspired. I find the most inspiration for me particularly is when I finish a film or a series. Being able to sit with something and actually have it make me feel a certain way is a more rewarding experience and inspiring for my work than scrolling and scrolling and scrolling on my phone. Not only for myself, but for you, I highly encourage to, instead of coming home after a long day and plopping yourself on the couch and just scrolling the evening away, take the time to look for something meaningful to watch. Not only is this a great way to find new inspiration or techniques if you're like me and you find something that's really fascinating in a movie and you want to go see how they did that, but it's also just a better use of your time. Your time is precious, and I would rather have memories of watching something that really pulled at my heartstrings. It could have made me really sad and I ugly cried at the end of it, or something that just made me so joyous at the end of it versus the mind numbing from scrolling. You can also do this outside of the house. You can go to an art museum and get to experience art in that way, or you can go window shopping at a local art fair, and that's a great way to not only be exposed to art that exists out in the world, but also get to meet the person behind that art and get to talk to them and see what inspires them and share stories and just form that connection outside of a phone. My next tip of advice is to take the time to create personal work. When we monetize our creativity, it's very easy to stop focusing on the art itself. And anybody who works in the creative field will tell you that a lot of doing this professionally is 80% business and marketing and 20% actually making art. And that can be a very soul-crushing experience. It's really important to remind yourself to create for yourself. When you are creating for somebody else, we tend to do things for them that is a bit more sterilized than what we might do for ourselves. That's not to say that there aren't hyper creative people who are interested in hyper creative artists and want something that your typical suburban family might not want. But those people are honestly few and far between unless you are really, really good at marketing yourself and are able to find those people in your area. It's just not the typical experience. Not to say it's impossible, it's just not the most prevalent. So when you are creating toned down versions of your creative voice, we can tend to lose ourselves in that. So it's really important to just kind of come back to your foundation and build something for yourself, something that allows you to experiment and play in that kind of sandbox. And that is how you're going to push yourself, and you're going to be able to build upon techniques that you don't typically get to use in, for my example, family portraits. Family portraits are wonderful and I love them, but it's not the fantasy photography that I do for my personal work that I also really enjoy. There may be overlaps in terms of color palettes and composition, but at the end of the day, there are two very different photographs and very different genres of photography. But it's because I'm creating those personal works to fuel my creative spark that allows me to make the best work for my clients that I possibly can, and also not lose myself in creating that work. This is something that I have fortunately been able to do a lot of this past year. I have done a lot of personal work that has allowed me to discover a lot about where my creative voice is at this point in time. I really dove into that, and I have a lot of work now to update my portfolio with, so that way I can find more people who are interested in my hyper creative stuff, while also being able to bring to the table what my typical clients are looking for. My next tip for you is to reflect on those creative experiences through journaling. This is really great whenever you have a really big project or a very meaningful project. Being able to sit and reflect and physically write about that experience, I find personally the way that my brain works, I'm able to hold on to those experiences a lot more than just flying through them. Being able to actually savor it helps my memory a lot. So when I am journaling these experiences, I love to use a certain format. I like to write about what went really well and things that I can improve upon. This is really great whenever I'm implementing new techniques that I haven't tried before, doing some experimenting. I can take note of what went really well and what I still need to improve upon. And I have found that in doing this, it helped so much with my imposter syndrome. I have admittedly fallen out of the habit of journaling, and it's something that in the new year I really want to get back into because it helps so much with my imposter syndrome. There were times this past year where I was working on some really amazing photo shoots, and there were times this year where I was working on some photo shoots that I was implementing new techniques. I was doing more with set design, or I was using cameras I had never used before. And during the process, I found myself dealing with a lot of anxiety, a lot of me questioning my creative worth, and I was beating myself up over it. But after I sat and edited the photos, or they came out on film, I looked at them and I was so proud of the work I was able to accomplish. And it reminded me that sometimes I do have to trust the process. And I wish during those times, immediately after those sessions were complete, I journaled it so that way I could have something physical to look back on, to remind myself whenever I am feeling those low days where I don't feel the most confident. I wish I had those to look back on to remind myself of the things that I am capable of. And I don't want you to have pitfalls this year. I want you to embrace creativity and make the most of your year. I hope that it will be as rewarding for you as it has been for me. And hopefully I will have another rewarding year ahead of me. That is all the time that I have for you today. I hope that you had some positive takeaways from this video, and I hope that we can go into the new year feeling bright and optimistic and ready to be artists in the world. I had a personal goal to reach 1,000 subs by the end of the year, so I don't think I'm quite going to reach that, as the end of the year is again, rapidly approaching. But if you liked this video and you would like to see more of my face, feel free to subscribe, like the video. It really helps me reach new people. And if you would like to share your New Year's goals, be it personal or creative, I would love to hear them. I feel like resolutions kind of get a bad rep, but setting goals for yourself is never a bad thing to do. I do also want to say that I typically am a bi-weekly release for the year, but because of the holiday season, I will be taking the rest of the year off, which is why an end of the year video is coming out a little bit earlier. So I will see you on January 6th. I hope that you have a happy holiday season. Thank you so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it, and I will see you next time. Bye.